Hey everyone, I'm here with two of my favorite men on the planet, Robert Schwenkler and Peter Rubin. And all of us, in one way or another, have had a weekend of grieving. And we were just sort of talking a bit about and expressing in our check-ins today about this grief and letting ourselves be broken, letting our hearts be broken open. And what it's like and how we show up in the world with our hearts broken open. And some of the ways that we desperately try to not let our hearts be broken open in this world as leaders and as partners and lovers and sons and daughters and friends. And so just want to open it up to all of us.
Yeah.
About these
I
broken
think I
open
want to
hearts.
start on that. Like it's not easy to live with a broken heart in our world. I think especially as a man, it's really scary. We have a lot of cultural norms that don't allow you to be brokenhearted. You have to be positive and put together and productive all the time. So I think we all walk around with a lot of unexpressed, untended to grief. And it's hard to even locate it. And it shows up as anxiety, shows up as insecurity and self-esteem issues.
Depression.
Shows up as depression, shows up as anger, frustration, annoyance, rage, illness. I mean, it shows up 100 ways other than what it is, which is just profound grief and heartbreak.
Yeah, and what I want to say to set even more context for this conversation is that our lives get built on top of that, whatever the depression, the anxiety, the rage, the whatever flavor it is, our life structures, our relationships, our businesses, and just our whole experience of life. It's like that emotional landscape is the footing, the foundation for these structures that we're building our lives on top of. And certainly in the context of the work that we're doing here with the Brotherhood community of wanting to create a more connected, more alive, more beautiful world. Like I know in my deepest heart that to the extent that we're unwilling to let our hearts break, we're actually building this business energetically, structurally, with the whatever flavor, like Peter, for you, anxiety, for me, like depression, whatever the flavors, like that's all going to get infused into the business that we're building, and ultimately not be of service of the ostensible end result that we're wanting to be creating through our work.
Yeah, so a leader's shadow gets woven into the fabric of the culture of their organization. That's what I hear you saying.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So as leaders, right, we need to look at the places we avoid, and the theme du jour is heartbreak. Because either we're unable or it feels unsafe. And I just, this last weekend, I sat in a ceremony where it was a very safe place. Phones were off. There was agreements and container and people sitting to tend to all of us in ceremony. And I just spent about 6 hours crying, just in such deep grief and heartbreak about the state of the world, the state of humanity, and just how much pain there is just to like drive by a strip mall, see all that concrete, everyone shopping, trying to fill some void, feeling my own aversion to that, my own separation. Feeling the pain of racism, feeling the pain of capitalism, all these ways that we've constructed, doing the very best we can, right, as humanity. And my heart just broke, just snotting and sobbing. And still feel it today. And it's hard. It's not fun to feel, but I needed to. And these guys, we just had our team check-in, and these guys are like, thank you for feeling that. Right. Better to feel it than to push it in, push it down.
And Peter, share a little bit more about what the cost has been, not just for you, but like, in your business with your clients. Like, what's the cost of not having been able to let your heart break in the past?
Yeah. I think most personally, it's been a lot of anxiety. I haven't known where it's been coming from, but having trouble sleeping at night, being anxious about all sorts of things, being stressed and anxious, and just seeing in this weekend that the root of that is unprocessed pain and grief and concern. It's like a deep concern that gets turned into anxiety because I only was letting myself feel that much for fear of how big the concern was and is.
Yeah.
Right.
And anxiety will drive us to do things. And if I just do something, then it'll be okay. Right. And the thing we need to sort of understand and divorce is the experience of just grieving how things are and then doing something about something. Right. Those are two separate processes, and it's really hard to do them simultaneously. Like grieving is an attending to our hearts. And I love the work that Reconnects by Joanna Macy, which the first thing I ran across of her was the grief work she developed for activists, for people who in the activism world who are so busy trying to change things. Many activists have lost contact with their grief, with the basic pain at the heart of their desire to change things, and without sort of reconnecting to that soft and tender heart, our work can be less effective. It can be more like just sort of running for the sake of running and being busy, rather than really deeply, impactfully, organically moving in a direction of change that comes from a place of a deep connection with the grief and pain of the world.
Mm-hmm.
And I, on a very personal level, was held in my deepest grief, such deep grief last night by my partner, who just returned home from a vacation and just came in contact with some very young parts of myself, very young, especially as I'm detoxing. I'm not smoking, I'm not drinking, I'm not doing any of the ways. When I'm not feeling my pain, I'm numbing my pain with something: tobacco, alcohol, drugs, and hard exercise, like whatever. Just give me something intense to do instead of feel this pain. And so I really got to be held in some just full soul racking grief last night. That was so healthy for me and for my beloved, to be able to hold me and to be able to experience my utter helplessness and intimacy in that place, and to feel her own compassion and her own strength of being able to hold me. Very powerful.
Let's speak to how to access grief. I know it's something that I've been learning recently. Like, what are the tools that we use? I'll share for me, I have a Spotify playlist called Peter's Crying Mix, where I collect songs that bring me to that spot.
Yeah. In fact, if you are watching and you have a beautiful song that inspires some healthy grief in you, would you please drop a link to it in the comments, or at least a name? Yeah. I really appreciate growing our playlist of grief. And I want to say that over the weekend I was having my heartstrings pulled really hard, and I want to name the thing that I noticed in the way of my grieving, which was that I was fixated on trying to convince somebody of their responsibility or culpability for my feelings. And when I was focused on them and focused on all the reasons why what they were doing was wrong, or why they should have done something different, and how they should be taking responsibility for their actions or doing something differently, like to that extent, I was not in my grief. I was in my anger and outrage. And
can I put a little bit of context around that real quick, Joshua?
Yeah.
That's what I call where I'm trying to dump my pain on somebody else. It's like, I'm not willing to feel it, and I'm going to do whatever I can to put it on you and make you feel crappy instead.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's basically I want you to attend to this pain. You need to take care of this pain, instead of me. And then it was the again and again, turning back toward this tender child who was so scared and so sad, just so deeply sad and scared, and looking toward him and feeling him and allowing the tears to come and allowing my body to shake and just process that really scary big emotion, but just to soften into and turn my attention toward my sensations and my experience instead of toward that person who is responsible for it.
Yeah, I'll say I have one of my go-to things in the past. I go through different things actually. So here's a few of the things that I've done, like grieving tools. One of them is on YouTube. I've looked up there's this playlist, the No Cry Challenge, and there's just like 19 videos in a row that will all make you cry. So for a little while, I was watching some of those. Occasionally, what I'll do is I'll look at photos of my cats, like my cat who died and the other one who I had to give away. And there's still this grief, even a few years later, that I'm working through. And sometimes they'll evoke some grief. Occasionally, I'll look at childhood photos of me with my family. And then one of the other things that I'll say is that on occasion, certainly being held by somebody reaching out for support and love and attention can be really helpful for me. And on occasion, even simply the act of reaching out, like the act of when I'm hurting and I want to reach out, but a part of me doesn't want to, simply the act of opening myself up to reaching out, whether or not they're available or respond in the moment, they may or may not be busy, that can be incredibly, like, sometimes I'll just crack open and start crying in that moment simply from allowing myself to act on the impulse of reaching out for support.
That's beautiful.
And what else I want to say is that, you're both talking about this softness that comes as we let ourselves grieve. And there's this, like, as well, I'll say that, like, when we don't let ourselves grieve, and certainly for me, when I don't let myself grieve, there's this rigidity and this tightness that comes in. And what I end up doing is I end up picking out things that are happening out in the world and reacting to them. I'll make meaning out of them, and I'll get rigid and I'll get tight and I'll react to them and I'll try to fix it and I'll try to control it and make it so that I feel safe. And what I'm doing is I'm just trying to control the outside world so that I can feel safe. Ostensibly, it never works, or it works for a little bit and then it doesn't. And when what I see in other people, when we let our hearts break, is there's this solidity and this groundedness and this firmness and this flexibility at the same time. I'm able to approach my work. I'm able to approach my relationships. I'm able to approach my lives with a really relaxed presence and a connection to inspiration, intuition, and the choices that I make feel like they come from beyond me, not even from me. It's like I'm channeling something greater, this greater wisdom and greater knowledge and greater capacity also to hold the energy of what I'm creating, to bring the wisdom to what I'm creating. Again, whether it's intimacy in my partnership or whether it's in my business,
Well, we've been talking about grief. I had this idea of us taking a risk and dropping into a brief grief circle to conclude this video. And this could totally bomb, grief on command, like who likes that? But I actually feel it not too far under the surface. So that's an idea I have. What do you guys think of that?
Lead the way.
Yeah, I'm open to the experiment.
Great. Let's all just tune in with our hearts and notice
and speak to the person who's watching as well, Peter.
Yeah. So someone watching, I just want to invite you to join us here and feel into your heart, into something you're grieving. You might have words for it. It might just be a feeling.
It can be something personal, or it can be something very universal or collective.
So I'll start feeling like a heaviness in my chest and face, and I think the thing I'm grieving is just the state of the world. It's pretty general, pretty broad.
Yeah. And what I'm still sitting with today and have been sitting with through this whole weekend has been grief around a loss from before I can even consciously remember. I had a baby brother who died when I was 1.25 years old, and I don't remember it happening consciously, but my body remembers it. And I'm just sitting with this grief. I can still feel him, can feel how it felt when he left. And I can feel how it felt to have my heart closed off to grieving that for my whole life as well. There's a lot of pain behind a lifetime of closure, and I'm grieving that as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, the grief that I'm touching right now is twofold. There's this grief for all that I've done in my life to numb my pain. And I look around at many of the men I love who are just caught in cycles of alcoholism and drug abuse. My family, just like so many people desperately trying not to feel like what is so painful about being human and being in the world, you know. Yeah, and then the ways that when I do start to feel it, I have this, even in the midst of my tears, I can have a critic who's trying to tell me to like shut it off because it's ugly, or don't let anybody see it because how fucking, you know, how disgusting or how weak I am to be seen like that, you know.
Yeah, I find my way through that as prayer. To pray for the tears to come up instead of down. To pray to be seen, to be open, to stop armoring and let some of that go. And I find that the other sort of thing that helps is like faking it till you make it. And sometimes the cry doesn't want to come out unless you sort of let it out. And the other thing that helps is song. I was wondering, Joshua, if you have a song you could lead us in to open this space up.
Well, I'm reminded of a song that came out of a ceremony that I did a few years back that I sang to myself. That continues to help to heal this hardness around my heart. And I'll sing it now.
Yeah.
Innocent one, beautiful one, perfect as you are. Innocent one, shine like the sun, perfect as you are. And all of their rage and all they betrayed that covered you with scars. And all of the shame and all of the pain that hardened around your heart. Dissolving, dissolving into the light of truth. Releasing, forgiving, for they know not what they do. Innocent one, beautiful one, perfect as you are. Yeah.
Beautiful.
I just got to say, this video has been really freaking vulnerable for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And maybe this is as far as we go today. That was a courageous start. What are you feeling so far, Robert?
I think it's going to touch the perfect people for whom it's meant to touch. And the context that I want to fit all of this in, it really is what we're calling integrated male leadership. It's this paradigm of leadership where we source our power and source our potency and source our aliveness and source our direction through letting our hearts break, through this act of grieving and these acts of connection, these acts of vulnerability. I look out at the world, and it's something that I want a lot more of in myself and in everybody around me.
Beautiful.
And that's why I'm doing this work.
Totally.
Yeah, I think what I want to say is I enjoyed this last 10 minutes. And the intention wasn't necessarily to put our tears on display, but I just think to show everyone sort of the struggle that we have, even to drop into that space, and the struggle to be seen in tears, and how much safety is needed that maybe we couldn't, touch on while we're doing a video for someone else. Yeah, just a lot of tenderness and encouragement to come hang out and grieve with us. We have men who come onto our intro calls and they grieve. We grieve with them. We have men coming onto our community calls to grieve together. And in our weekend, this is funny, we have a grief piece that we keep skipping on our weekend. Joshua keeps wanting to bring it, and we never have time for grief. So this June,
what an apt analogy for life.
Right?
Never have time.
Right? I don't know how we never have time. So this is like a running joke now in the brotherhood community. And this June, we're going to grieve hard. We're making that a priority.
Yeah, and to close out, guys, I want to hear you speak on a very personal level. What opens up in your life as you allow your heart to break?
Yeah. Beautiful.
Oh no, I want to hear you both speak to that.
Oh, I thought you meant to people commenting. I'm like, that was a really good
yes,
prompt.
no, the people commenting for for anybody listening, make a comment like when you let your heart break, what opens up, and let's us three close out with a little bit of what becomes possible.
Joshua, will you start?
Yeah, I mean, a very concrete example was just the exquisitely vulnerable, tender, emotional, sort of tearful lovemaking that I had with my partner last night, on the heels of our grief, of my grieving, of her grieving, of holding each other in our tears, and in a place where it's not like, I don't know, our sexuality arose so honestly and so spontaneously out of this sense of deep, intimate connection with one another, and it was so beautiful and so rich. Yeah, orgasmic.
Yeah, I'll go next. Oh, were you complete?
Yeah.
Yeah, also I've had some of the best sex of my life after a deep cry and just being in this really soft, connected place. And another thing that's come through for me through letting my heart break literally is my life purpose, is my body's, my nervous system's availability to my life direction, to this, this thing that's calling me forward, that gives me immense amounts of fulfillment and pleasure and connection, and I get to make money doing it. It gives me literally, like, on spiritual, emotional, physical levels, it gives me everything that I need to be sustained and nourished and fulfilled.
Oh, yeah. For me, what's on the other side of grief is peace and connection, and and all of my gifts are on the other side. All of it, all the flow, my deepest gifts, they're all there.
Anything else from you two to wrap up?
No, way to go there. Good job, team.
So it's Robert, Joshua, and Peter, brotherhoodcommunity.com. Thanks for being with us today to talk about grief. And again, anything that came up for you, please leave it in the comments. Any tools that you use to access grief, and just what becomes available for you in your life as you allow yourself to grieve. Bye-bye.
Bye.